Hello, everyone. Welcome to all our participants joining today. We're just going to give a minute or so for folks to join, and then we will get started. Welcome to everyone who's joining in. Everybody signing on. Great to have you here today. Just going to give it about 30 more seconds or so, and then we'll get started. All right, we have a good number of folks joining us. So without further ado, we will get into our presentation. So again, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Before we get into it, I wanted to introduce everyone who will be joining us today. My name is Carrie Huber. I'm the Manager of Graduate Marketing and Recruitment with Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs. And so I'll be hosting the webinar, introducing folks, and we'll be leading the Q&A at the end. And then throughout the webinar, joining us, we'll have Stephanie Singh, who is our coordinator of occupancy and data from Campus Housing. Also from Campus Housing, we have Kristen Leal, who's our manager of graduate and student family housing from Campus Housing. We have Brianna Johnston, who is our admissions and guest services coordinator from United College. And then we have Maria Brisbane, who is our housing coordinator from the Graduate Student Association. And she'll be sharing some information from the Graduate Student Association perspective and some different resources. So before we get started, I'd also like to recognize that the University of Waterloo acknowledges that much of our work takes place on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. Our main campus is situated on the Haldeman Tract, which is the land promised to the Six Nations that includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. Our active work towards reconciliation takes place across our campuses through research, learning, teaching, and community building, and is coordinated within the Office of Indigenous Relations. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we get underway. Our format today is we have a presentation, so a bunch of information to share with you, and then we'll have a live Q&A at the end. The session will be recorded and we'll be posting it on our future students section of our website, but also for everyone attending today and for those who have registered in advance, you will get an email from Zoom that has the recording so you can go through if you need to review anything. So if you do have questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A button, which you'll see at the bottom of your screen. I would ask that maybe we will be covering a lot of different information, and some of your questions may be covered at some point during the webinar. So if we kind of are getting to the end and there's still something we haven't answered, feel free to pop it in. But again, you're also welcome to pop anything in the chat at any time. We will flag some questions that we'll answer live. We often do get a lot, so even if we don't flag it, we still might answer your question live at the end. But I do also have a couple of colleagues who will be answering some of the questions in the background. So if we're able, we may also just answer your question as you ask it. And any links that we do mention will be added to the chat so that you can reference them. We will also include all of the links when we post the webinar as well so that you can refer back to those. So just a little bit about our region and university before we get into the details. So where are we? The University of Waterloo is located in Southern Ontario, which is in the city of Waterloo. It's about 100K west or so of Toronto and easily accessible by train, bus, plane, car, all of the above. We're fairly close to the airport. It's about a 45-minute to 1-hour drive from the Toronto International Airport. And our campus is located in the city of Waterloo, which is a short distance from uptown Waterloo, which is sort of the main downtown area of Waterloo. And campus is easily accessed by public transportation, which includes the ION light rail rapid transit line and buses. We do have an interactive campus map that you can check out if you happen to be visiting campus. And you can also check out our graduate studies self-guided tour to kind of get to know your way around a little bit. But if you don't have a chance to visit ahead of your time here with us, You can also check out our grad studies video tour of campus. It will sort of take you around all of the relevant spots on campus for grad students. You can kind of get an idea about what things look like before you join us. So also a little bit about Waterloo Region. So I said the city of Waterloo, but Waterloo Region is actually made up of 3 different cities as well as some townships. So that's the city of Kitchener, the city of Waterloo, the city of Cambridge, and our surrounding countryside townships. And Waterloo Region is actually one of the fastest growing regions in Canada, currently home to over 600,000 residents, but still has a bit of a smaller city feel. So you get a lot of the amenities of sort of a larger to mid-size city, but with more of like a smaller to mid-sized city feel. So not maybe as hustle and bustle of Toronto, but of course we are still quite close to Toronto for things like concerts, big sporting events, etc. But we also have tons going on here as well. So you might have heard and you might know we're pretty well known for tech, and we have one of the fastest growing tech sectors and the world's second highest startup density after Silicon Valley. We're home to some of Canada's largest tech companies, global think tanks, innovation hubs. Companies like Google, BlackBerry, and Square all have headquarters here. So we're not only tech, of course, we also have a vibrant food scene with a couple different pretty well-known farmers markets, the St. Jacobs Farmers Market, lots of awesome craft breweries, and tons of amazing different restaurants, pretty good food scene we have in town. And also lots to do. We have Christmas markets, food festivals, special events and festivals almost every weekend in the summer. There's something going on, whether it's between Waterloo or Kitchener. And we also have the world's largest Oktoberfest outside of Munich, Germany, that happens every October. If you're wanting to sort of see and get a sort of inside look at some of the things happening, including restaurants, things to do, there's a couple really good Instagram accounts. I'll get my colleague, he'll paste them into the chat. One's called Curated KW, and the other one is called KW Famous. And those are 2 local accounts run by folks in Waterloo. Again, it's info on restaurants, things that are going on, kind of a good way to get sort of a sneak peek on things that are happening in the region. And then once you're here, they're also just a great way to see what's going on and find out deals and kind of fun things happening. We also have a lot of outdoor amenities, hundreds of kilometers of bike trails, walking trails. We have a local downhill, it's ski resort, very small, but it's still right in the city. We're close to cross-country ski trails. So there's lots of outdoors things to do as well. It doesn't take long before you're out in the country, and it sort of feels a little bit more rural. So we have a really great mix of kind of that urban rural feel. And if you'd like to get a better idea of sort of what the city and the region looks like, we also have a video tour of Waterloo for grad students. And I'll get my colleague to paste that in the chat as well. So another thing, kind of before we get into some of the housing specifics, it's really helpful to understand your costs and what some of your expenses might be before you arrive. So we do have a helpful study and living cost page. Some of you might have accessed it already, but it can sort of help you get an idea of what some of the things are that you should be looking at in terms of your expenses and or approximately how much those might be. So that is a helpful chart. Of course, we'll talk about this more, but of course, things like rent can really vary depending on the choices you make and where you're living. But we also include things like, potential budgets for groceries and clothing and telephone, all of that kind of thing. Also one-time costs. If you're not from Canada or you're from a warmer area of the world, things like winter boots, winter coat, just expenses that maybe you might not have considered, but are also important and will come up before you arrive. And also just to mention that those are, of course, all estimates. Your individual situation might vary, but we want to kind of give you an idea of what some of those might be. So before we get into the meat of the presentation, a question that often comes up is for we probably have some students joining us who are going to be in our professional programs or course-based programs, which are predominantly online, and you might not actually have to be on campus that much, but some of them have week-long intensives, often in August, where you do have to be on campus just for that time. We get a lot of questions about where you can stay during that time. So I'll get my colleague to post some of those resources into the chat. We do have a couple of on-campus options, but just a warning, those are limited and they fill up quite quickly because there are quite a few programs that do have those on-campus intensives in August. So if those ones are full already, when you check, we do have the option of residence available if you need to be here before August 25th. So as long as you're here before August 25th, then you can use our summer residence options, which we'll pay some info about that as well. If it's after August 25th, however, then you'll need to look at alternate accommodations like Airbnb or hotels, which we also have some lists of hotels in the area as well. So just wanted to share that because I know we have some of our course-based students joining us, and that's important information for them. So I will now pass it over to Stephanie, who will take us through our on-campus housing options.
Thanks, Carrie. Yes, as Carrie mentioned, my name is Stephanie and I'm from Campus Housing. So at Campus Housing, we have two main residences where graduate students can apply to live on campus. We have Columbia Lake Village South and Columbia Lake Village North, and together these make up the Columbia Lake Village community. There are grad spaces that are located in Columbia Lake Village South, and both family and graduate spaces that are located in Columbia Lake Village North. Both residences are close to campus and are made up of two side-by-side townhouse complexes. The CLV community is located in the northwest corner of Columbia and Westmount Streets, and it is about a 15 to 20-minute walk to campus. There are about 2 bus stops that are located at the front of the community, and grad students are eligible for local universal GRT bus pass, which allows residents to hop on any city bus that loops through Campus Ring Road. There are also city buses that are provided throughout the year, so you could use those buses to go to campus or just for getting around. Next slide, please, Carrie. Perfect. Okay, so there are approximately 400 bed spaces in graduate housing and 82 family units in family housing. In CLV North, that's Columbia Lake Village North, and the South, there are shared accommodations. So there's a 4-bed, 1-bath that is in CLV South, and a 2-bed, 1.5-bath in CLV North. It is a 4-month renewable contract, so you do have the opportunity to renew your contract every term for the same unit and the same room. And students must remain enrolled full-time in a graduate academic program in order to apply for this renewal. Units for grad housing are also furnished, and some appliances are included. The fees are also paid in Quest per term, and you can refer to our campus housing website for the exact fee amounts. Single graduate fees are paid once at the beginning of the term in the same fashion as tuition through your Quest account. And some of our amenities include front desk at the community center, wireless internet, dawn support, utilities are included, laundry facilities, share amenities, programming at the community center, and much more. You also have the option to select a meal plan, but this isn't mandatory, it is optional. For student family housing, this is located in CLV North only, and it is available as a 2-bedroom, 1.5-bathroom townhouse. So this is the entire townhouse. It is a 12-month renewable contract from August 1st to July 31st annually with a 60 days notice for terminations. Students also have the option to renew their contract every year, but students must remain a full-time in an academic program in order to renew. Our units for families are typically unfurnished, but some appliances are included, and fees are also paid monthly through a rent portal. Family housing also includes the same amenities as our graduate housing and also include the optional meal plan as well. And now I'll hand it over to Kristen to share a little bit more of what it's like to live on campus.
Yeah, thanks, Stephanie. So my name's Kristen. I'm the manager for graduate and student family housing within Campus Housing, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the experience of what it is to be a graduate student or a student family living with us at CLV. In CLV, Columbia Lake Village, lots of acronyms. You'll hear me refer to it as CLV. So besides living in a safe, quiet, and clean community, campus housing staff work together year round to enhance the on-campus graduate student experience for CLV in a lot of different ways. Our goal is to create a graduate and student family residence experience that Waterloo grads and their families love and benefit from, both personally and academically. And we want to create a really great experience that living with us at CLV becomes the preferred choice for Waterloo graduate students and student families. I think a real pinnacle of how a real uh, valuable part of how we create community is through our graduate dons. So a don is a graduate student who works for us in campus housing. They live in their community, and they are an essential part of our team that provide help and support to our students. They organize and lead amazing programs. They help support students through different processes or difficulties that they might be experiencing throughout their graduate career with us. And they really are those core individuals in our community that we really rely on to help leverage, to help create a really great experience. Dons have duty rounds each day to ensure our communities stay safe, as well as help flag and report any facility or maintenance concerns across CLV to make sure that our properties remain safe for our students and our student families. Our Dons also reach out to students through Teams or emails to check in, share useful information about upcoming programming, as well as valuable campus housing information around timelines like renewals or when to expect new contracts and things of that like. Each month as well, our graduate Don team organize anywhere, I would say from like 2 to 4 social events in the community. For programs, just I think last weekend we had pancake breakfast for St. Patrick's Day, which was really well attended. We do a lot of intercultural programming as well because we have a really vibrant um, cultural community within CLV that we're really proud of. And so yeah, as if you're thinking about living with us on campus, your Don will be a really great point of contact for you to really engage in the community. Some other things that, I want to touch on, living in a safe, quiet, clean community that allows you to help meet other grad students is another really valuable thing that can come from living in CLV. We receive very consistent feedback year after year that property is very safe and quiet and clean, and our residents really, really appreciate that about living in CLV. Like Stephanie mentioned, all-inclusive living, utilities, internet, events. We are in a really great location. We're just in the corner outside of campus. Um, Reliable and trustworthy maintenance services. Like I said, we really do strive to create a really responsive maintenance program. And a lot of that comes from the staff that we have on the facilities team for CLV. And yeah, the other things that I've already mentioned really just relate back to events and our dons and trying to create community. And I really do want to impress upon you that we do want to create a really great community for the grads and student families that live with us in CLV. And it's definitely a high priority for us. So I think I'm going to pass it back to Stephanie now for some more information on applying to live with us in campus housing.
Thanks, Kristen. Okay, so, the next slide, please, Gary. Perfect. All right, so our graduate housing application is expected to open on March 26th. So that's next Tuesday. Our graduate housing is always in high demand, and if you are interested in this type of housing, we encourage you to apply as early as possible since offers are typically sent on a first-come, first-served basis. A good thing to note is that our current grad residents have the opportunity, as I mentioned, to renew their contract for the next upcoming term, and the take rate for the renewals are typically around 80%. If you do request a suite mate in your application, you can identify them through the application process. We can't guarantee that you both will be matched, but we will do our best to accommodate that when possible. If you do not have a suite mate in mind, we will match you primarily based on gender and age. A note is to complete the online application. You must have accepted your offer to the university, claimed your What I Am ID, and also set up your two-factor authentication. For family housing applications, we highly recommend taking the time to review the eligibility criteria online before applying to family housing, if this is an option that you're interested in. Our family housing is also in very high demand with a limited number of 82 units, and unfortunately, we cannot guarantee this type of housing for everyone. We tend to have about 5 to 10 new students move into these accommodations each year from our waitlist, and this depends on when or if a current student family resident decides to leave campus housing. Because of this, units may become available at any time throughout the academic year. You can join the family waitlist online. The waitlist is ever ongoing, meaning that you will only need to sign up once, and from there, once a term, we will reach out with an email invitation asking you if you are still interested in keeping your waitlist position active. Should you no longer be interested in being on the waitlist, you will need to remove your name or let your waitlist position expire when you are asked about your interests each term. Otherwise, you will continue to have a space on the list until you reach next in line on the waitlist. Should you reach your spot on the waitlist, a campus housing staff member like myself will reach out to you as soon as possible with a residence offer. As mentioned, units may become available at any time throughout the academic year, and a contract start date may not coincide with your term start dates. Another thing, it's just a reminder, you need to have your What I Am activated as well in order to log into the system. And now I'll pass it over to Brianna to discuss another campus housing option for graduate students.
Thanks, Stephanie. So as mentioned, I work at United College, which might sound a little confusing to people at first, but the University of Waterloo has a really unique position where they are affiliated with 4 other institutions. We're on campus, but across the creek, we say. So we're pretty much right beside the university. And we all have different communities that kind of appeal to different folks. At United College, we're the only ones who have a graduate residence. It is right beside our undergraduate residence. It is its own building, so you don't live with first years. And it has a few different unit types, which I will go over. But we are in a similar position as campus housing in terms of our family housing availability, which is basically 0 at this point. So I'll talk a little bit about it, but unfortunately those applications are not open at this time. We do have an ongoing wait list as well. We just can't have it open right now, just with the length of the list as it is. We are a much smaller facility. We only have about 100 to 150 people who live in the building, and we have slightly different qualifications to live there. So grad students, master's and PhD candidates, but also postdocs and visiting scholars and folks who work at the University of Waterloo. So because of that, we do often find we are full throughout the terms because folks can stay for longer, and it seems like they like it there, so they stay for longer. But in terms of single individuals, we offer our shared suites. So they are basically an apartment that everybody has their own individual room, and then they share a bathroom, a kitchen, and like a living room space. So those are for 2 and 3 people who share together. We also match based on gender, and we do try to match based on things like program, age, what we can based on the openings that we have and the people who are next on the wait list. We do have 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. Like I said, they're not currently available, but when we do open them up, our priority is for families, folks with partners and children that can't find single individual housing, obviously. All of our shared suites include a full furniture package, as well as fridge, stove, microwave. And there is a laundry facility in the first floor of the building. We also offer 24 hours service. So our dons are trained to respond to anything at the grad building as well as our undergraduate residents. We do have a facilities full-time staff member who's on call 24 hours a day. So there is always someone available to help out if there's something that's needed. The building is locked 24 hours a day. So it is fob access only for the folks who live in the building or if they work in the building, like our facility staff and that. There is a small gym facility on the first floor that only our grad tenants can access, as well as a few shared lounge spaces. So there is one for families, there's another one that's more of a study space, and in the spring and summer months, we have our balcony that's open, obviously not in the winter. So we are, like I said, right on campus, and we just have a different experience than on main campus. Everybody's community is a little bit different, but we all have the same priorities in terms of student success and safety and comfort. We do have various events that happen on our campus as well, in terms of community dinners and other activities. Every year we have a big barbecue. I get to man the cotton candy machine. It's my favorite job. Yes, we like to get people engaged as well as much as possible, but we also like to have a nice quiet building for them to kind of go back to. So again, we're on campus right by the transit lines that are on the kind of outskirts of transit, and it takes, or outskirts of campus, and it takes about 10 to 15 minutes to walk to where the train station is for the light rail. And it's very easy to come in and out of campus. I do it every day myself because I don't drive. I come in from Kitchener. So overall, it's just a nice community that's a different approach. And again, our suites, the applications are open now and kind of ongoing until we fill spaces. We generally don't make offers though until after May 1st. So our current tenants also have the option to renew as long as they're part of the University of Waterloo. So we can't really know what spaces we have available, but as with campus housing, as soon as you're able to put in that application, put it in so you have your best chance to get an offer. And then my contact information is there too if you have any questions. And that's all for me.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Brianna. We'll hear from Brianna again in just a couple minutes as we get into some of the off-campus housing information. So now, if you prefer not to live on campus or you don't get into on-campus housing, there are many different options for off-campus housing. So we will chat about that a bit. Just move the slide. All right, so if you're looking for off-campus housing, the best place to start is with our off-campus housing page. So I'll get my colleague to post that into the chat in a second here. So the off-campus housing page has lots of different resources, step-by-step guide on everything that you need to do, things to be aware of, resources. But a good thing to do also, and somewhere to start after you've looked at the off-campus housing page, is familiarize yourself with the area as best you can. So I know we shared some resources earlier on about campus maps. Obviously, Google Maps is a great resource. We have an interactive student housing map as well. And you can also explore, I mentioned we have the Ion Light Rail Transit. GRT stands for Grand River Transit. That's the name of our transit company. That's the bus system. And checking out the map, the transit maps and sort of seeing where they are in Google Maps, where they are in relation to campus. And that will give you an idea of potentially where some good places to look for housing might be. Because of course, if you are on a transit line, obviously if you're on the light rail line, that's going to be the easiest way. If you're on a bus line, that's going to be the easiest way to get to campus. And of course, the further out you go, it can also lead to some cheaper options. Of course, options that are close to transit are going to be a little more expensive sometimes than ones that aren't super close to transit. But sometimes the options that are closest to campus can be a little bit more expensive. It really depends on the building. But if you familiarize yourself with the area a bit, check out the transit lines, you can see, you can put in Google Maps the directions, see how long it might take you to get to campus from a certain area in the region. And that can be really helpful just as you are kind of looking around and seeing what some of your options might be. Another really great resource that we have is something called Places for Students. So it's a site that that Waterloo, the University of Waterloo, has partnered with. And it basically means that all of the rental listings there, they abide by the City of Waterloo's rental housing licensing bylaw. So they're all going to be legitimate listings that have been verified. So you're not going to get anything sketchy or weird or scammy. The listings are all descriptive with photos. They have icons and things for amenities, floor plans. There's also options for short-term rentals and sublets. So if you're looking for a shorter period of time, and they also offer a roommate service as well. So if you want to post a profile that you're looking for a roommate to live off campus with, they have a feature for that as well. Or if you're looking to sublet your apartment as well, so potentially you have leased a place for a year, and you're not end up going to be there the whole time and you can't break your lease, you can also post your sublet on there as well. So Places for Students, they do work with local landlords and accommodation providers to post available rental options, as I mentioned. Landlords register to post a rental property listing through there. So it's really a great place to start. So that's called Places for Students. And we have our own sort of University of Waterloo listing on it. Now, of course, there are a whole bunch of other different sites where you can look for off-campus housing. And we'll paste a bunch of them into the chat. You'll also find a list of all of these resources on the off-campus housing website. Some of them are specifically geared to students and are close to campus, but not affiliated with the university, but sort of in that close to campus community. For example, listings like Accommodate You, Icon, those are ones that are specifically geared to students. Other options like Kijiji, PadMapper, Rentals.ca are general listing sites that are, of course, not geared to students. And just a note for those ones. So if you're searching on some of the general ones that aren't geared to students, you might not see a lot of listings pop up until July. So if you're on there now, don't be too stressed if you're not seeing a lot of things for September. And that's because in Ontario, by law, tenants have to give 60 days notice before they vacate a rental property. So that means that July 1st is the date where most tenants, if they're moving out of a place in September, July 1st is going to be when they're giving their notice. So then that means the landlords aren't going to be posting rental listings until sometimes late June, early July. And some renters may choose to give notice earlier, but generally in Ontario, it's that 60 days period. So a lot of the listings on those sites that aren't geared to students will start popping up more in July. So that's just kind of a hint, something to look out for. So this next slide here, this is just what the Places for Students site looks like, the University of Waterloo one, where you can, again, browse listings, post roommate profiles, sublets, all of that kind of thing. So I'll now pass it back over to Brianna, and she will take us through what you need to know before you rent and some things around your legal rights as a tenant, safety things, and some other tips and resources.
Thanks, Carrie. So I've been in my role for about 6 years now, so I have come across a lot of different kind of stories and tips and things like that in terms of living off campus. So I wanted to share some of that information. I know it's a lot of information, a big information dump on everybody, but a lot of these resources, like Carrie already said, are available on the off-campus website and through the contacts of the folks that are here. So a few different kind of tips before you rent, before you sign any documents. You may be looking for roommates. So Places for Students does have that option to look for a roommate, but you may also know someone you want to share with. So just making sure you have clear expectations with the other people you're living with, and that you have very similar priorities, kind of day-to-day tasks, that sort of thing. But also, if you're moving in with folks you don't know and you have an opportunity to meet them first, I highly recommend that. So it may have to be a video call, but it also could just be in person, depends where you are. Good to get to know those folks before you show up the day you move in, and feels a little more comfortable that way. We've already mentioned that you got to be a little careful with the legitimacy of the ads that you're finding. So unfortunately, like any city, there's always going to be some renters who are maybe not the best folks to rent from. I think we do a pretty good job with the off-campus housing site to give you that original resource to go to, but there's also things like Google reviews, looking up, there's a lot of Reddit feeds about the different organizations that folks have come across in the years that they were here at the University of Waterloo. So it's really good to get all of that background information before you're signing anything. Often you get very excited because you find something that sort of checks all the boxes for yourself. And you might in that moment be so excited that you sign your paperwork without doing a little bit more background research. And especially if you're new to the area, making sure, as Carrie said, that you know where these places are situated, how you're going to get to campus, and just what's on offer. So rent can range from anything from about $950 to close to $2,000 a month, depending on the unit that you're looking at. So it could be a single room in an apartment or house, or it could be a full apartment with multiple bedrooms if you're here with your family, for example. Something that you really need to take a look at is what's included in that rent. So campus housing and United College both talked about the fact that we're all inclusive of our utilities, but most rentals off campus do not include all of your utilities. So things like your internet, your electricity, those sorts of things. Also finding out what the names of all of those things are, because we like to be confusing in Ontario and call our electricity hydro. It is not hydroelectric, but it is also not your water bill. So just, again, taking that time to do the research about what's included, what's not, parking, laundry, all the basics of what's going to make you feel comfortable where you live. And just kind of break it down, give yourself maybe a little chart or something before you actually sign anything. There was that student budget calculator, some of those prices and pieces of information about, what your grocery bill might be, where you might be in respect to any grocery store or various other resources off campus. So keeping in mind what the actual guidelines are, I think we can head to the next slide, Carrie. Ontario has a standard lease and has a pretty thorough tenancy agreement we call it RTA, Residential Tenancy Act. So it's in place to protect folks from bad landlords. It's also in place to protect landlords from bad tenants. But there is a standard lease, which is a really great thing to have in place, because it means anybody you're renting from has to have that same documentation. They all have to follow the same guidelines. If they try to work outside of that standard lease, it's not valid. So in Ontario, for example, pets, no one can say no pets in an apartment building. It's not legal technically, but a lot of landlords will put that in their lease because they want to try to avoid having people who have pets. So if they put it in the lease, it's not technically legitimate, but you might not have a pet anyways, so it's not a big deal. But the basic structure of it is a standard lease. So there are some resources where you can look up what that template is. So again, I highly recommend familiarizing yourself with that and having that open when you're looking at another lease that has been offered to you. The tenant rights are pretty thorough. It's a pretty big document in terms of all the things that you can expect from your landlord. Anything from your maintenance concerns and what they need to provide in terms of service, but also things like deposits and expectations of when you need to be paying your rent. So it is illegal for a security deposit to be requested by a landlord. Basically with the idea in place that they could take that money and never give it back to you for whatever reason. They could make a reason up. So to protect tenants, Ontario said no security deposits. You do require a deposit of your last month's rent, which is basically you're paying for the last month that you live with them. So essentially you're going to be paying 2 months of rent upfront because you're paying for the first month and the last month of when you move in. They can ask for a key deposit, which is literally the cost of if you lose your key, not to like rekey your lock, not anything elaborate. So it should only be $25 or $50. Unfortunately, that is how they sometimes get around a security deposit, and they will ask you to pay a $500 key deposit. So you just kind of have to, again, familiarize yourself with those, the documentation, but also, if it seems like a really great place to live and they're just asking for a higher key deposit, but they have good reviews and they're returning those deposits, it's probably not a big deal. So you're just kind of balancing the information that you're being given with what you compare it to that other places that you're looking at. One thing that I really highly recommend if you're coming in from outside of Canada or outside of the province is to ask for like a video tour, or to have a friend or family member go through the unit and film it for you. Online photos are notorious for angling things a certain way to make spaces look bigger. And you don't really know until you get there. When I went to do my master's, one of the girls came from Nova Scotia, and she ended up in a 240 square foot room in the basement of a bar, because she didn't have anyone to check that out for her. She made it work for the year, but just if you can get them on the phone with a video tour, it's not that difficult these days with the way technology works. Or you might already know someone in the area who's at UW who can pop over and take a look there for you. The landlord's going to ask for a bunch of information, but there's also things they do not require to ask for. So things like photocopies of your driver's license or ID, passport, those sorts of things, they're not necessary. They just need personal information, the basics like your first and last name, how to get in touch with you, but basically for exchanging information. They shouldn't be looking you up through things like your driver's license. They may ask for a credit check. That's pretty standard in a lot of apartment buildings. So basically they're checking to see if you're a reliable tenant. If you already have a bank account in Canada, if you're an international student, or you've had a job in Canada before, you probably have some credit. If you don't, they may ask for someone like a guarantor, which is basically somebody who can sign for you as like a safety net. So basically, if you aren't able to uphold your lease, there's somebody else that the landlord can turn to and say, hey, this person's not paying their rent. So it's basically someone's not co-signing with you, but they're speaking on your behalf and giving you that sort of legitimization that the landlord may ask for. So again, this is huge dump of information, but just being cautious of what your legal rights are is a really good way to get into searching for a place to live. So there's a lot of tips about safety and legal support through the University of Waterloo, making sure that you feel like you're finding the right place to live. And also, if something bad happens or you have a landlord who does something that you think is off, like once you're here, there's always someone that you can kind of turn to get that information and support. So you're not completely stranded on your own. Overall, I think the housing is broad. As Carrie mentioned earlier, you can move out to various cities around the area, and it's a little bit cheaper, but you also just need to decide what makes more sense to you. Like if your budget's a little higher and you want to live closer to campus, that's great. Then you don't have to commute quite as long. So just make that list beforehand. Make sure you're familiar with the standard lease and you know your rights as a tenant before you sign on the dotted line for anybody. That's it.
That's great. Yeah, thanks, Brianna. As you said, it is like, it's a lot of information. Brianna was just mentioning that there are some legal supports and other resources available. So I'll now welcome on Maria from the Graduate Student Association, who will talk about those in a little bit more detail and what the Graduate Student Association can offer, some of their supports and other resources. So go for it, Maria.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maria. I'm the housing coordinator for the Graduate Student Association at the university. So the Graduate Student Association, or GSA for short, represents the grad students at the university and really works to serve the needs of our graduate student population. So we do this through advocacy. We have different social and academic supports. So we negotiate the health and dental plans that you're automatically enrolled into, as well as the GRT, so the transit pass that's included on your tuition fees. If you're someone who may be driving or doesn't require the transit pass, at the start of each semester, you are able to opt out, and then the GSA will send information about how to do so each semester. So a little bit about what I do in my role is I work with on and off campus partners to advocate for, just general concerns that grad students have with their housing. So some of the work that we've done has included informational campaigns. So for instance, in the winter, we had sort of a winter maintenance reminder for people, thinking about your thermostat, different like heaters, snow shoveling, salt, all those things, getting to know what the requirements are for you. We have events, so we do host a roommate matching event. So it's a social event where students can come and try and meet other people that they might want to live with. This is typically once you're already on campus, but we're trying to look into ways we can do this for new students as well. And we do have people can email me and have consultations. So sometimes, if you're not sure where to look, or if you have a question about maybe a specific property management company along those lines, then I can sort of point you in the right direction of who to ask. I do have the links to all the different off-campus housing searches. So there's different Facebook groups, different like Reddit threads, for example. So sometimes people contact me asking for very specific information like that. And in regards to legal support, so through your student care benefits, which starts once you are a student at the university, you do have access to legal support through that. But we also have a partnership with the Waterloo Region Community Legal Service, where they are able to offer free legal support regarding tenancy issues. And these are drop-in sessions, and they happen once a month right now, based on sort of need. And you can go ask one of their lawyers or one of their coordinators, one of their staff members, a question about any issues you may have, whether that's about, a lease, something that has to do with like maintenance. It could be an issue that needs to be escalated to the landlord tenant board. Anything along those lines, you can access them and they'd be happy to help you. If you require additional assistance after meeting with them, they will coordinate that with you on an as needed basis. But this is a great opportunity to get sort of, again, like the lease, any questions about your lease. If you're seeing something that doesn't match the Ontario standard lease, this is a great way to kind of ask and say, hey, I'm looking to sublet or I'm looking to do this. This seems a bit off. Is there any way I can go back, or any feedback that they can get can provide to you? So broadly, the GSA has several services and programs. So we do have the Grad House, which is our grad student on-campus pub that does have a discounted fees on food if you pay your Grad House fees as a student. There are events for international students. We do have a BIPOC student collective. There is advising, legal support, as well as a new scholarship for new students that are Black or Indigenous that you can apply to, I believe, in your first year. So these are all different opportunities that we offer, and I'm happy to answer any more questions after.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Maria. I'll just pop on really quickly here. I know it's in the chat already, but just Maria's contact information. As I said, she has access to a lot of the resources that we've talked about already, as well as their website. So we have now come to the end of the formal part of the presentation. So we will go through the Q&A. We'll just leave this email up here. If you have questions specifically about campus housing, you can email housing@uwaterloo.ca. Again, we also shared Maria's contact and Brianna's contact, and you can also email me. Maybe Jason, if you could pop my email into the chat as well. So if you have general questions and you're not sure who to ask, you can always send me an email and then I can direct it where it needs to go. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'll just ask all of our panelists to come back on, and we will start going through some of the questions. We've got lots of great questions here. So let us start off. Let's go back to the top here. See, some of them here were answered. Okay, let's go. Thank you everybody also for working to answer some of these in the background. So we've had a couple questions about when the applications open, what time zone, what time exactly, because I think people want to make sure they're getting right in there.
Absolutely. So yeah, as I mentioned, the applications for graduate housing opens on March 26th, and that will be at 9 a.m. at Eastern Time, US and in Canada.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephanie. I've noticed we've had a question too about pets, if pets are allowed. We usually get that one every year too. I saw you did answer that one, Kristen, but maybe just to share it with the rest
Yeah.
of folks.
So pets are permitted for our student families as that contractual relationship with them is underneath the RTA, and we just heard about the RTA of pets from Brianna. So yes, you are permitted pets in our student family accommodation. However, grad students or undergrads who have a service animal can go through our accessible housing accommodation process to make sure that we're able to support those students.
Awesome.
And I'll jump in there. Ours is the exact same guideline. So in the apartments, because we fall under the RTA, you can have a pet. But our suites are our residences. So that's a no pet policy unless they are a service animal.
So we have had a couple questions sort of about availability and wait lists. So is there a wait list for, it's kind of a two-parter, are there a wait list for newly joining graduate students? Or is the pool of selection different from the students who are already here? And then how many spaces are open? I don't know who wants to take this one, if maybe Stephanie or Kristen. But yeah, a lot of questions about, what's the likelihood people will get in? How many spaces are open, that kind of thing.
Sure, I could jump in here, Carrie. So we have a wait list, but that wait list is specifically for family residents only. As I mentioned, there's only 82 units that is available for family students. For grads, however, we do not have a wait list, but we do have a renewal period that happens every term for our current graduate residents. So in spring, our current spring residents will have the opportunity to renew their contracts for fall. So depending on how many students renew their contracts for fall, that would highly influence the amount of available units that we will have for fall for our new grads. So I hope that answers the question. There's no waitlist or grads, but as I mentioned, we do encourage students to submit applications as early as possible, since we typically send offers on a first come, first served basis. I see Kristen has her hand up.
Yeah, there's a question in the chat or in the Q&A that's related to the waitlist idea, but for families. And so I do just want to note we have 82 units for student families. That is not an application process. So the question asks, the application starts on March 26th. The application that's opening on March 26th is for our graduate residents, student family residences. It's a wait list. So you can apply to be on the wait list at any point as long as you fulfill the eligibility requirements. And so, don't wait until the 26th of March to add your name onto the student family wait list if you're interested in living with us and fulfill the eligibility obligations. Add your name in as soon as you're interested in living with us. And then as that wait list, as students move out and more students move in, you will rise up on the wait list.
That's a great point, Kristen. And I think also just to encourage everyone to, if you're applying for just the single grad student spaces, to apply as soon as possible once the application opens, because then you'll have the, best chance of potentially being offered a spot. So it's always worth putting in an application. And I see there sort of in tandem to this, there was a question about knowing the results of the applications. And Stephanie had mentioned that typically offers are sent starting around May, but then they do happen on a year-round basis as well. So you do have to wait a little bit, but there still is, we can't say, and you can jump in, Stephanie, we can't say that there's a specific percentage that you will get an offer, but because it totally depends on how many people are applying, but it's definitely worth putting your application in.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, just to go back to your point there, Carrie, offers are sent typically in a weekly round basis. Our offer windows, sometimes it will change from a 7-day window to a 3-day window. But once you receive an offer, we will include those details in the email.
Awesome. Brianna, do you have something you want to add on?
Yeah, we are pretty similar to campus housing. We give people about a week once we send out an offer. Just a reminder that our suite applications are basically always open at this point, but we still are not making offers till May. So that kind of goes back to something Carrie said earlier, which is if you can't find something right now, it's not quite a time where you should be stressed, because a lot of us have to wait until the spring term starts just to know who's staying on with us and what is open. It's not really a responsible thing to do, is to send offers and then suddenly not have any availability. But a reminder from my end, our family housing waitlist is closed, but you're welcome to connect with me in the next few months when we find out whether or not we're able to open it up again.
So Brianna, we have another question actually about United College here. So how can incoming students apply for United College? I see the United College application is open for fall term, but the graduate residence application portal for fall 2024 does not seem to be open yet.
That confuses me. It is definitely open. It's likely what you're seeing is the applications for the apartments, the graduate apartments is not open, but you should be able to apply under the 2024-2025 banner. And under that, you then go under the classification for a grad student versus an undergraduate student. So the portal is the same for everybody. It's just based on what program type you're in, and it should then guide you through which units in the shared suites that you can apply for. The application for the apartments is a separate application, and that's what's closed right now, but you should be able to go through, and it's just it's a separate portal, so nothing through Quest like campus housing, but all your fees and everything is through us directly, but everything should be available for them to put in now.
Yeah, and I see it was Maxwell who asked that question. Maxwell, if you're still having trouble, please email either me or Brianna, and we can help get you sorted. This is a question for anybody who would like to answer it. So if you are signing a lease for off-campus housing somewhere, how difficult is it to find someone to sublet your place for the summer months? Does anybody have experience with that or want to share? Maria, maybe, have you heard anything from students?
I think subletting for the summer months is a hit or a miss. You might get an undergraduate student who's willing to sublet, because undergrad students who are on the co-op terms, for example, they rotate. So there will be students looking for a place in the summer. However, there is a large uptake in people looking to sublet their place over the spring term. But there are options, and I think students do look for sublets often.
Yeah, that's a good answer, Maria. It's sometimes it can be challenging, but you can also find someone, so it's not impossible. It just it definitely is a possibility. Yeah, unfortunately we can't say for sure what will happen, but it is a possibility. We have had a couple questions about policies for visitors in on-campus housing. One example, somebody has a partner visiting from out of town. Can that partner stay with them? Can they move a larger bed in to the space?
Yeah, I can take that one. So I will say that having visitors is probably a little bit different than having parents visit. So you are permitted visitors while living in residence. And I would encourage all of you, if you are curious around the terms and conditions or like what the rules are for living in residence, we post our terms and conditions on our website. I can drop the link in the chat once I've wrapped up talking, and that'll kind of give you, I think, the nitty gritty of like what it is, like what are the rules of living in residence. And so for visitors, for graduate students, what's included in the terms and conditions is that if you're going to have somebody over, visitors are permitted for around 48 hours, so the length of a weekend, really. It's also noted that you need to connect with your roommates and those that you live with to make sure that everyone's on the same page about the expectations of what that visitor is going to do while they're with you. I will also note, though, having parents over, I'm not sure how comfortable parents would be sharing a small bedroom and a single bed with their child. So I'd probably direct your parents to maybe book a hotel room or find off-campus accommodations for the weekend. But yeah, if you're going to have visitors or guests over, as long as they're respectful and they are staying for 48 hours, just connect with your roommates to make sure that everyone is on the same page about that. I will also note there are certain periods of the academic year where we do not permit visitors. St. Patrick's Day, Orientation Week, they're already fairly busy times in the academic and student experience cycle. And so there are some periods where we don't permit visitors. All that information can be found in our terms and conditions. I saw some nods from Brianna, so there's probably some similar stuff for United College. If you have anything you would like to share, feel free.
Yeah, it's generally similar in terms of shared spaces, just that expectation that you're connecting with the people that you live with in the suite, to let them know and make sure that they're comfortable having someone else in the unit with you. Again, you have to restrict when folks are there because you can't just have someone else move in with you. Again, just a quick note, if you are in an apartment, you obviously have control over who comes and stays with you. Another quick note is that we have some guest rooms over at United College. So if you do have family coming from overseas, especially, and you know those dates ahead of time, jump on our website or call us to see if there's an availability. If you have an active student ID, you do get a discounted rate, and it's right on campus. So if you guys are up at CLV or are with us at United College, it's really quick to be able to connect with your folks that way too.
Can confirm. I have had my parents come to visit me. I'm not a student. I'm just as a normal person. My parents came to visit and they stayed at United College, and they had a lovely time. So thanks a lot, Brianna. What would be the earliest check-in date for graduate housing? How early can people come?
Yeah, I can take that one as well. So our graduate contracts will start on September 1st for fall. And so September 1st is your move-in date. I see some notes that that's the holiday weekend. Yep, it is. I will be there at the tent welcoming you here on September 1st. I saw a few questions and I did answer one already about the potential for early move-in. Unfortunately, we're not able to accommodate early move-in. September 1st is really that very set move in date. Grad students, as an example, won't actually be moving out until August 29th. So we really only have a day and a half, 2 days to flip the units, make sure they're clean, get all the keys ready. So yeah, unfortunately, if you're anticipating being here or needing to be here before the 1st, I'd probably direct you to some short-term accommodations. But we will be ready with bells on September 1st at CLV.
Our timeline is slightly different, just to make things more confusing for everybody. So our move-in dates are always the 3rd of the month. So May 3rd, January 3rd, September 3rd. That's not in order, because our tenants stay until the last day of the previous month. However, there are occasions when somebody leaves early. Maybe their flight home is a little sooner than they anticipated. So if we can, we try, but there's by no means a guarantee that we'd be able to have someone come in early. It's a case by case basis. And I should note, because we are right beside our undergraduate residents, it's also a benefit to not move in on the long weekend, because that's when 300 and some odd first year students are arriving at our residence right beside the grad building. So it's kind of nice to be able to be there either the day before or the day after. So the 3rd is, I think, the Tuesday this year. So everybody else will be settled in and be able to move in a little more comfortably at that point.
That's great. Thanks, Brianna. Yeah, it can be a little bit confusing because it's some things are similar between our main housing and then United, but then some things are different. So thanks for pointing out that difference. Do you have a question about if program funding can cover expenses for campus housing? So this is if a student is funded through their PhD minimum funding. I'm not actually 100% sure on that. Maria, do you know?
I am not 100% sure. I do know that your student, your funding, can cover your tuition and fees, and you can choose to defer your payment that way. In terms of specifically for campus housing, I'm not sure if there's the same type of agreement for funding in that sense.
Yeah, so for the person who asked that question, if you want to send me an email, I'll double check on that. You can just reply to the Zoom email that you got, and that'll come to me, and then we can get that double checked for you. But definitely not for off campus. It said for on/off campus. Off campus housing is just that's totally your own thing, not connected at all to the university. So definitely wouldn't be able to for that one. Someone's asking, how many students can live in one of the rooms in CLV? I think Kristen has already sort of covered this. This is specifically for the non-family units, and it's just one person.
Yeah. So, oh, Steph, feel free. I've been talking a lot. Steph, it's all you.
No worries. Yeah, so for graduate housing, as I mentioned, you do have the option for a 4-bedroom or a 2-bedroom. So if you're in a 4-bedroom, there will be 4 students in the townhouse. So you'll have 3 roommates. If it is a 2-bedroom, you'll have 1 other roommate.
Thanks, Stephanie. We have someone asking about the places or the listings on the places for students listing service. Are they safe to live or are they verified? They're saying it looks cheaper than what they've seen just sort of out on the market generally. Does anyone know? I mean, I think they're verified in the sense that like it's not going to be like a scammy landlord in the sense that like the listing is legitimate, like the place exists. They're like a known quantity landlord. Brianna, do you want to jump in?
Forgot how to unmute. The only thing I would add in terms of pricing, 2 kind of tips is, one, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. If it's drastically cheaper than somewhere else. And 2, those kind of listings may come cheaper because you're sharing with more people. So the listing you see is the bedroom in the unit and all the things that are included. And so it says, hey, it's only $800 instead of $1,000 a month. Well, that could be because there's 6 people in the shared space. So just reading those details and how that compares to the other listings. So it's quite possible you're paying less because you're sharing with more folks.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And then places for students is like student geared listing. So it'll be a house where maybe there's a lot of rooms in the house, but that could mean that there are 10 students living in the house. And then of course that distributes the costs a little bit more. So that can also be the reason why those places for students spots are looking cheaper than some of the other places out there because they're more smaller suites in like bigger houses or buildings. All
Sorry,
right.
Carrie, I did want
Yeah.
to add something else that I had mentioned before. This is more for if you're living in like an apartment building or a separate contract, not student housing off campus. The Residential Tenancy Act is in place for folks who are renting an apartment from a landlord. If you are renting in the house that is owned by the landlord, they often they're renting out their basement or a couple of rooms in their house. If you are sharing the facilities with the person who owns the house, you are not covered under the Residential Tenancy Act. So again, that affects the price because it might be a better deal, but you do not have the same protections under the law in terms of your expectations of the landlord and what they can and cannot do. It doesn't mean it's a bad situation if you know someone who owns a place and you're wanting to rent from them, just keeping in mind that things are a little different if you live with the person who owns the building or the house that you're in.
That's a really great point, Brianna. Thanks for mentioning that. Can a grad student request a roommate if that roommate doesn't have an offer yet?
I would say that a roommate would need to submit an application, a campus housing resident application, because we could only try our best to accommodate any roommate request if both students submit an application. And hopefully, I would like to encourage students to submit that application around the same time as well. But again, just wanted to mention that we don't 100% guarantee roommate requests, but we do try our best to accommodate those requests once we get them.
And Stephanie, I don't know if it's something on your application, but in ours, you do have to provide proof of your offer to the university. So I think the question was if your friend hasn't received an offer yet, they can't, on our end, they can't start an application without proof that they're going to be a student. So it's a little trickier there too, because it's for people who know that they're coming to the university. If, you know, you put the name down, again, we can try, but it just depends on what's open and whether or not that person puts in an application in time too.
Yes, we also do our eligibility checks before sending offers to students as well. So we would make sure that these students are eligible before sending any housing offers.
And just to note, we are encouraging, apply early, apply when they open, et cetera, et cetera. But that doesn't mean that, because sometimes your program may be delayed in getting you your offer. It happens for a variety of reasons. So you may get an offer maybe later than someone else or it's just later than you'd ideally like, and it's after the applications have opened already. Still apply. Because as Stephanie said, especially come May, offers are going out on a weekly basis, but there's a limited amount of time that people have to accept those campus housing offers. So then if they don't accept it, then a spot opens up, like maybe they found alternate arrangements. So we would still encourage you to apply. Like if you're still getting, your offer doesn't come through until April, I mean, as late as May, starting to get, we don't usually send out offers that late, but it can happen for sure. So if you are interested, we really do encourage you to apply, even if it's been a little while after applications open. So because, yeah, often people won't accept their offer of housing. So then that means their space is open still. Just a note. Someone asking, they're unsure if they'll be able to register on time for fall 2024 because of delays in visa processing. We know that can happen for a lot of our international students. So if they don't have an update about their visa, what is the deadline? Like, can they cancel their campus housing application? How does that work?
You can submit a cancellation, and in the cancellation, you could indicate that the reason is a deferral. We would need to verify that on our end to ensure that the deferral status is updated on your Quest account before we assess whether you would receive a full credit when submitting that application.
Very similar on our end, just proof of the fact that you have to defer. If I'm able to keep you on mind for the next term, I would prioritize trying to be able to make that offer to you, knowing that you had already signed an offer for fall, for example. If I can offer for January, once I know, I will try to make that accommodation, but it's tricky again with the amount of people who are looking. But yeah, you do need proof that you had to cancel and why you had to cancel with the university.
Thanks, Brianna and Stephanie. So there's someone who was reading through the terms for a family unit, noting that it has to be a married couple with, or doesn't have to be a married couple with children. They're a full-time student looking for a place for themselves and their partner who's not a student, and wondering what their options are as a couple.
Yeah, great question. So I think the link has already been put in the chat. Thank you, Jason. We do have very specific eligibility for the tenants that live in our student family housing. It's pulled directly from the family definition from Statistics Canada, married couple with children, common law couple with children. You don't need to have children, I think is the answer. If it's just a married couple that is considered a family underneath, the definition of a census family by Statistics Canada. So you are all good. Double check the actual eligibility on our website. And you'll need to submit proof of that eligibility to make sure that you are a family. And
oh, looks like Kristen might be having some internet problems, but I think she did pretty much answer the question. So, so that's all right. Yes, you don't have to be married as long as you're a couple. And common law in Ontario, common law means that you have to have been living together for a year, and you have proof that you've been living together for a year to be qualified as common law. So already common law.
And then just to answer the second part of that question, that if you both have to be students, I think was the question. And no.
Well, they were just saying that their partner wasn't a student, and
yes, so
which is
to
okay.
me, like, that's fine as long as one person is affiliated for campus housing. Obviously, if they're a grad student, for us, if they're affiliated with University of Waterloo.
Yep. This one, actually, Maria, you might be able to help answer this one. They're saying for new grad students, what are the best ways to find roommates for off-campus housing? And wondering about, and then we also had someone ask that from an international student perspective as well, how they can meet a potential roommate.
Yes, so the Places for Students website does have a roommate matching function. However, a lot of students do go to the Facebook student-run housing groups. So there is a Facebook page that it has student housing in Waterloo region. So you'll see students from Laurier, Conestoga, Waterloo, all post there. And people will usually do a little mini profile and say, you know, I'm so-and-so, I'm coming as a graduate student. I'm looking, you know, for a roommate. And you might list some of the traits you're looking for in a roommate. So I've done this myself, and that's how I found my current roommate. Lots of people do this, and typically some of the best practices are people might see your profile, they might say, hey, I messaged you, and then you can speak with that person. And then in my case, what I did is I video called with my current roommate, and we, you know, got along, had similar kind of living styles. So it worked itself out. So I'd recommend some of those pages are a good way just to kind of put it out there and see. And then you'll also see people subletting. You'll see people posting housing. Some of the local property management companies have their staff post in these Facebook groups as well, and will give updates on the availability of housing in their units as well.
Thanks, Maria. Kristen, now that you're back, this is this might be for you, or this actually, I'm not sure. Anybody can answer this one, I suppose. If someone's asking if they are able to secure on-campus housing, can they connect with their roommates ahead of time prior to moving in?
I could jump in here. Yeah. So yes, once your roommates have agreed to share their information, once you accept your offer, you are able to see your roommate information in your application. So that will be found in your welcome homepage that you do submit your application. So you'll be able to see your roommate's name as well as their email address.
Great, thanks, Stephanie. Another question, I'll just reiterate this about when the application's results will be announced. That's starting usually in early May, and then the offers are sent out on a weekly rotating basis. So yeah, I don't think it's so early May. I don't think there's an exact date yet, Stephanie, right?
I would say about mid to end of May.
Oh, mid to end of May.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah. And the only reason for that is because our renewal period for our current spring grads happens in early May.
Oh, got it. Okay. I think I was confusing that time. Yep. So mid to end of May, and then it's on offers go out on a weekly rolling basis after that. Someone's asking for incoming students in the fall who've just accepted their offer of admission. Do they need to register for the fall term before applying to campus housing? As long as you've accepted your offer of admission in Quest and you've stated your intent to come here as a student, I believe that is sufficient because you can't actually register for your classes until August. Stephanie, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's correct.
Okay. Yep. There's another one. Someone's asking if prices tend to increase or decrease for the fall. Like, are there fluctuations based on time of year? Do we know of any areas that are most common, like less expensive and like a good place for moving in with looking for a place for their family?
I goes back to something we said earlier about looking a little further out. As I might have already mentioned, I live in Kitchener, so Kitchener is a little bit cheaper in terms of housing options, and Cambridge is a little bit further out. So sometimes cost is a little bit lower there. So as long as you're willing to connect through transit or drive in to the campus, you can find great options in secure apartment buildings throughout the entire region. Really, it's just kind of the further you get away from that main bubble, the cheaper things are going to be. But that doesn't mean there's not a lot of good housing options.
Yeah, for sure. I think yeah, especially looking a little further out, your commute might be a little bit longer, as Brianna said, but that's a good option. I would say like the region is fairly safe overall. It's worth, again, Reddit's often a good resource for kind of checking around and seeing if people have something to say about a particular area or whatever it is. But overall, like the region is quite safe. But if it's a particular building, like it's always great to go. When I used to rent in Toronto, we would always check on like the bed bug registry. I'm not sure, and if somebody can jump in, I don't know if we have one for Waterloo region, but again, Reddit is a great spot to be like, Googling the landlord or the rental company and or property management, and if they have like 0 stars and everybody's complaining, might want to stay away from it. Also, sometimes it's worth, like, for sure if it's universal bad experiences, but I think it's also worth remembering that often people will only write things when they've had bad experiences. So if you see one negative thing about a building, but there's other positive ones, sometimes it's, that doesn't mean you're going to have a bad experience. So I hope that helps. Maria, you want to jump in?
Yes, just as an aside, the Go bus, so if you do end up moving into Cambridge, the Go transit system, if you want something a bit quicker, does run fairly frequently, I believe hourly, between the bus that goes from Cambridge throughout Kitchener, Waterloo, and goes up to the University of Waterloo stop. Go Transit would be a bit more, but there is a Go Transit student discount that once you're a student you can apply for, which would give you a decreased fare.
Great point, Maria. We've had this question, sort of a variation, again, asking about proportion of students who apply for on-campus housing who typically get in, and it changes so much. It changes every year, very dependent on students that are renewing, how many new people are coming. But just to reiterate, it's still worth applying, because it's not like we have spaces available in our single family or single grad student housing. And then also, I don't know if we've talked about this yet, if you don't get in for the fall, there are often like lots of then spaces available for the spring. So maybe you live off campus for a little bit. Maybe if you decide you do then want to live on campus, you still have the opportunity to come back and live on campus and apply for a spot. And I don't know, Stephanie, if there's anything you want to add, but from what I've chatted with my housing colleagues before, I understand that, like, yeah, spring often you could then get in and then you can renew, and then that's a good way to kind of stay on.
That's right, Carrie. Yeah, so our graduate housing contracts are typically 1 term, and that's available every term. So there's an application that's available for the fall, for the winter, and for the spring. And we do tend to have a bit more vacancies in the spring compared to fall and winter.
So sorry, Brianna.
Ours is really similar, obviously, again. However, our initial contracts are at least 2 terms. So you're signing fall, winter, or fall, winter, spring for your initial contract. But then same as campus housing, you can renew on a term-by-term basis as long as you're still eligible to do so.
Yep. Awesome. Also reiterating that if you are coming with a partner and you've applied for non-family housing, for family housing, as has already been mentioned, there isn't an application. That's just you're going on the wait list right away for family housing. The application is for single grad student housing, and you cannot live with a partner in that. It is just 1 student per room in that one. Somebody asking about application fee, deposit. There isn't an application fee, correct?
For campus housing, there isn't an application fee, but you are required to pay a $500 non-refundable deposit when you accept your offer.
Thanks, Stephanie. Someone's asking, is there a recommended move-in date or timeline for off-campus housing? I mean, I don't mind jumping in. Is that typically when you're not affiliated with the university and you're just in general sort of market rent, leases go from the 1st. They start on the 1st of the month. So you will technically expect to move in on the 1st of the month, even if it's like, doesn't really matter what day of the week it is. It will always usually be the 1st of the month, which does, like, if you do know you are moving in, especially for September 1st, try, if you need to like book a moving truck or something, try and do that as soon in advance as you can, because that is like one of the most popular times. But yeah, occasionally like you might be able to negotiate with the landlord to move in a little bit earlier or a little bit later. But yeah, we would recommend September 1st, because then you'll be ready for when classes start that second week of September. Brianna?
Just to add a little note is I have had people who find places for August 1st. Obviously, that's an additional expense, of course, but especially folks with children, and you have to figure out registering them for school and finding your way around. And sometimes if you have the opportunity to do so, it might be a good idea to try to get in for an August if you can, and again, want to pay. Gives you more time to get comfortable and figure out all the things that you need to figure out, particularly if you have children with you.
Maria, do you want to add on to that?
Oh, yes. If you are planning on living in one of the student geared property management companies off campus, some were mentioned earlier, Icon, Accommodate You, Sage, Res One, they will have set move-in dates, and those are not negotiable. Lots of students, myself included, have tried to negotiate some of those dates. They are not negotiable, so you might end up with a September 6th move-in, for example, September 3rd, 4th. Just as a heads up, if you are going to be living on one of those properties, those may not actually start on the 1st, in comparison to maybe a private landlord or just a general apartment building in the region.
That's a great point.
Double check
Maria.
your classes. I would double check in case, I know some programs have very specific orientations that require you to be here. So just as a heads up, double check those dates if you are going to move into one of the student geared off-campus housing that are typically close to campus.
Yep, great point. As graduate students, can we apply to Village One, Claudette Miller Hall residences, or any of those ones? Or is it just CLV?
As a full-time graduate student, we only have accommodations in CLV community.
And can you apply to both CLV North and South?
So in the application, you have the option to choose your preferences. So you could rate CLV North as your first preference, or you could rate CLV South, so that's the 4-bedroom, as your first or second preference. We do not guarantee your first preferences, but we do try our best to accommodate everyone's first preference, of course.
Thanks, Stephanie. Some folks asking about if they don't get a student visa, will they be able to get their deposit refunded?
Deposits are typically non-refundable, but I would recommend that you reach out to housing@uwaterloo.ca so we could handle this on a case-by-case basis, and then we could determine whether the deposit can be refunded or not. But typically, the deposit that you pay is non-refundable.
Thanks, Stephanie. And is there a first-year guarantee like for undergrads?
There isn't a guarantee for graduate students. Our first-year guarantee, it's only available for our first-year students, but not for grads, first-year undergrads.
Thanks, Stephanie. Somebody asking, are there dishwashers in CLV North?
No, there aren't any dishwashers available in CLV North. Yeah.
Darn. I see we just have a couple minutes left, so I'm just going to quickly look through maybe for our final question or two. So how long do we have to accept our offer of housing if we get an offer in May? Anyways, they're asking because sometimes it takes a while to receive their visa. So if they get if they're an international student, they get their housing offer, but they don't have their student visa yet, what can they do in that situation?
For campus housing, our offer window is typically a week. It really depends on the student if they are willing to accept the offer or not. If you are not, if you did not accept the offer, you could I would recommend just reaching out to housing@uwaterloo.ca again, just letting us know that you're still interested in receiving an offer, and we could try to send you an offer based on availability. But again, it won't be guaranteed.
Thanks, Stephanie. I've just put that email address in. I think that's a really great point. If your situation, because sometimes situations can be complex, we recognize that, especially for international students. But please don't feel like you have nowhere to go, no one to turn to. If your situation is unique, you're not sure, please email housing@uwaterloo.ca, and our folks we all I know all our colleagues in campus housing are all great and wonderful, and we want to help everyone as much as possible. So they will try to work with you to help figure it out. So please don't think it's just impossible. Please reach out. And yeah, with that, we're at the end of our session. And so just also wanted to reiterate, thank you for joining us, and please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. We are happy to help and try and help you find the answers that you're looking for. And so we hope this was helpful, and thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you here in the fall. Bye, everyone.